And more information about the project itself will be provided by my colleague in the second part of the presentation. So what is crowdsourcing? The word comes from another word, which is outsourcing. As you can see in this Ngram Google Trends diagram, both are quite popular nowadays. Outsourcing is still used mainly in business and administration, and it means hiring external companies to provide specific service or products for a particular institution or a company, and it is a paid job. Unlike in the case of outsourcing, crowdsourcing is free and voluntary job for the benefit of all stakeholders. Crowdsourcing originates in the concept known as the wisdom of the crowd or collective intelligence. And that was developed in 2004 by James Surowiecki in his book, The Wisdom of Crowds. This idea was further developed by Jeff Hove in his Weird magazine article in 2006. As the diagram demonstrates, the term outsourcing was very popular in the 90s with its peak in 2005, and from that time its popularity is on decline, while crowdsourcing is gaining in popularity with every year, and the interest started around 2006. It's quite difficult to define crowdsourcing because there are over 40 different definitions provided by various authors. Yet out of all these definitions available, it is possible to extract several core features typical of crowdsourcing. And these are collective activity, which is intentional and voluntary. The activity is conducted by a group of individuals, which is called the crowd. The crowd is created, the crowd actually is available through an open call for a crowdsourcing task, which is announced by some institution or some company. So the crowd creates itself, so to speak, out of people who volunteer to contribute to a project. So in other words, there's some kind of initiator, the company that announces the call or some institution. So it is, in other words, a top-down activity. It starts with a call, and then the people try to contribute to the problem-solving project. So the focus is also on common, clear aim of the task, which is usually a problem-solving task. The work is collaborative, which means that people from the crowd share their tasks, but also they exchange experience and they support each other. And there's a mutual benefit for all stakeholders as the requirement for a task to be called a crowdsourcing one. And of course, the use of the internet is a must. So in other words, we can distinguish three areas here, which are the main elements of the definition. We have the crowd, we have the initiator, and we have the process. Of course, there are many subtypes of crowdsourcing. You have some of these enumerated here. The names simply emphasize varying aspects of crowdsourcing. Probably best known is crowdfunding. More recent types involve crowd content, which is working collaboratively on content production, crowdstorming, which comes from brainstorming, or crowdcasting, which is based on announcing a contest to solve a problem. Now, there are different types of crowdsourcing, and the most typical ones are explicit. However, there's also an implicit type of crowdsourcing, which is not widely known, and it assumes that the crowd is not aware of taking part in the crowdsourcing activity. And this can be, for example, learning a language through a platform, let's say Duolingo, or doing some online tests or tasks. So the crowdsourcing initiators who have access to the backstage, so to speak, of the software, they can monitor how internet users engage in the test or tasks or courses, and they analyze which parts of the pages are efficient, which are not. So this is quite helpful for the platform people who have access to a platform management. And it helps to develop, of course, learning, teaching materials. And implicit learning is also the topic of a working group 2 from our NET Collects project. And these are researchers who are mainly based in Bolzano in Italy. A relatively new type of crowdsourcing is crowdsourcing for education. It was initiated only recently, just a few years ago. And compared to traditional definition of crowdsourcing, it is much more relaxed. Not so many requirements are necessary. For example, the element of having the superordinate initiator who announces a formal call about a problem-solving task is not necessary. And the project can be initiated by individuals. So in a way, it can be processed in a bottom-up way. It can be processed in bottom-up way. Members of the crowd or even individual can initiate a project. Thus, the typical top-down approach can follow a bottom-up activity. This type of crowdsourcing reminds me of fan subbing, which on this view is also a form of crowdsourcing. And fan subbing is providing translations in the form of subtitles for films by amateurs. And of course, there's no official call to translate a film. Just the process starts from the bottom in a bottom-up fashion. It is initiated by amateur translators. Educational materials can be prepared by professionals, that is, educators, teachers, for the purpose of language teaching, and then it exemplifies crowd teaching. But it can also be prepared by learners, students, to be would-be teachers themselves, and then we deal with a bottom-up process or crowd learning. The learners learn from each other as a result of collaborative work, and this collaboration of course may take place on different planes, for example, linguistic support, technical support, translation skills support, but also they learn a lot themselves. It is learning through doing, in a way. So, because preparing educational materials for peers requires a lot of effort on the part of non-professional educators. Okay, there are several platforms which illustrate crowdsourcing for education, such as Alpheus. However, it is prepared only for as they call, the classical languages, which is Latin, Greek, but also Arabic and Persian. And two other platforms which are quite similar, Clilstore and Learning with Texts. These platforms allow one to learn a foreign language through reading a text and analyzing the text. That is basically through reading. And a similar platform, yet with many more options, is Lara, which is a learning and reading assistant platform. And in our presentation, we are going to show applications of Lara to learning, teaching Polish and Icelandic. So we will focus on Lara, and that was developed by Dr. Emanuel Reine from Geneva University, and he is the main person who actually developed the software in Python. And okay, and then we have I use this platform with my students from the University of Gdańsk. As you can see, English philology students, first and second year of MA courses, and I asked my students to translate The Little Prince into Polish. So that was a task, a project of educational project where students were supposed to create texts, Polish texts, for English-speaking learners of Polish. Each student translated one chapter. They were very short, like, half a page or maybe one and a half. The students were trained, of course, how to use the platform during our classes. And during our classes also, as well as outside of formal teaching, the students discussed, communicated with each other, discussed linguistic and technical problems that they encountered. After the projects ended, they were also asked to fill in a questionnaire about crowdsourcing as such and Lara as educational platform. And if you want to use Lara, then you have to set up your account, and the home page looks like this. On the left margin, there are many different options. You have to click creating text, and then you have to set up the information about your text. And you have to upload your text to the system, and the system automatically tags the text. Currently, for most languages, a tree tagger is used. However, this is not very accurate for Slavic languages, including Polish. So recently, a morphological analyzer Morpheusz tool was implemented, and together with the disambiguator Concraft, and now the results of annotation are highly accurate. Okay, so these are the annotators. Okay, so then the next thing you have to do is to translate the text. So there are three steps in translating a text in Lara. Okay, first you translate single words. However, although they look like they are taken separately, they are not, in fact, because when you hover over the words on the left hand side, you will see the whole context of these sentences. So you can actually translate the words in such a way that it is actually already adjusted to the context. And then we have segment translation, which is basically sentence-based. And finally, you have the third stage, which is seen in this screenshot, and it is in a form of a three-liner. The original text, in this case, it's Polish, because it's actually not from The Little Prince, but from another project I have started myself about Gdańsk. Information based on Wikipedia. The original text is in the first line and it's in Polish. The tentative sentence-based translation is in the third line, and this is the output of a sentence segment translation. And in the middle, we have either three boxes or single words which come from the previous stage, which you can still see here, the vertical translation of single words. And they are just to hint you how to translate possibly the text. And the middle line is basically what you have to do in the middle line, which is editable. You have to write the final version of your translation, or simply to smooth out the tentative translation, which is in the third line. Of course, you don't have to follow all the three stages if you have high skills in both the language, English, as well as in translation skills. But if it's translated by non-professionals, it might be useful for them to follow the three-stage translation. And finally, you can also record your translation, and you are automatically redirected from Lara to an external platform where you have to set up your account, a different account, and then all the recordings, all the sentences to be recorded are already waiting for you. And you can record either sentences, as is seen here, or single words, or both. And then you have the pronunciation of single words, as well as words in context with all the assimilation rules involved in fast speech. Okay, here we have a screenshot of chapter 3 from Little Prince, which was translated by one of my students, and the text is displayed in three colors, as you can see. The colors indicate different aspects of the word. That is, for example, in red appear words which are only once used in the document. Then we have green words, which are words which appear twice or three times in the text, blue 4 or 5 times, and black, which appear more than 5 times. So they're quite popular and frequent and probably worth learning in the first place. You can also see the loudspeaker icons, and when they are clicked, you can listen to the audio recording of the native speaker. So in this particular text, when you go to Lara platform and you click it, you will hear one of my students reading the text. Okay, if you click just one of the words, let's say it's the word to. So if you click it, then translation appears in not translation. First, if you click to, then you will see the word in context, and actually not only in one context, but all the sentences with this word that appear in the file will be displayed here. So you have access, immediate access to other examples of how this word can be used in different contexts. When you click the arrow next to the to word, then you can see again these words in context, but with recordings. And apart from that, there are also lists of words which may be displayed alphabetically or based on frequency lists. And okay, you can see it here. And this is just a frequency list. So again, you can decide which words to learn first, because if they are very frequent, then probably it's worth starting with them. Okay, and then the last slide for my presentation is again, when you click any word in the on the right-hand side, then its translation is shown on the right-hand side. So words which are clicked in the very text, they are shown in the right margin. Their translation, frequency index, as you can see, alphabetical index, so I've already talked about it, as well as a word in context, in a sentence, but also, quite importantly, the grammatical dictionary of Polish information. There's a link to this external platform I mentioned before, and here you can see, actually, you can see the word with much more detailed information you get about the word than just the basic form, like an infinitive in the case of verbs. Actually, here you can see the declinations or the conjugations, and it's very important, especially in Slavic languages, to have access not only to the base, to the lemma, but also to the other forms of the word. This option is not available in the other platforms for language learning I mentioned before. So this is, I think, quite an advantage of Lara over the other programs available at the moment. Okay, and now my colleague will talk about the application of Lara to learning Icelandic. Before that, however, he will say a few words about the very project, the EU project we are in, as well as a few words about the Lara platform and the group. We are also collaborating with them.
Yes, thank you very much, Anna. I don't know how fast these slides will be going on. For me, I would like to share my own screen, however. And so that I can show you. Do you see my screen here? Very well.
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can see it.
So thank you once again, Anna. My name is Branislav Bedi, and I'm originally from Slovakia, but I live in Iceland, and I work for the Arni Magnusson Institute for Icelandic Studies, where we actually do a lot of crowdsourcing for collecting data or data sets, whether spoken or written in Icelandic language, to develop applications, various applications. And I joined 3 years ago this network called Inet Collect, and which basically is a network that connects people who have something to do with crowdsourcing for language learning. And anyone is able to join, anyone who is interested in contributing or learning about different platforms or ideas or collaborative projects that are shared within this action is welcome to join, and they can be teachers or students even. And this is basically a membership, or if you can say it like that, it's free of charge. And basically it consists of being listed in the email bank or email address list to receive updates if there are some ideas that the community would like to share. Personally, I work as a leader of the working group 3, which focuses on users and usability. And this is very important, especially when new platforms or websites even or applications are being developed, because they have to be tested. The design has to be tested and adjusted so that it's so that users find it good to use for themselves. And one of such projects is the Lara platform. It is still a project in development. It's a prototype of a platform, as Anna has mentioned. It is a crowdsourcing platform which focuses on explicit crowdsourcing, which means that contributors are welcome to produce or create content. So basically physically use the platform to upload the documents, to use the tagger to annotate each word, which the system will then use to create different data sets for inserting translations and of words or sentences, and then to record audio or video for other data sets, such as voice recordings when you want to listen to each word or pronunciation of each word or the whole sentence, or even video recordings, which is usually used for sign languages. Lara platform has been used widely, basically for about 15 languages, I think. Content in 15 languages has been created, and Anna has been working with her students on creating The Little Prince with Polish translations. And I have been used Lara for creating texts, Icelandic texts with English translations, for example. The difference is that Lara is an open source, which means that it can be used, or many developers or interested people into an open source system can use Lara to basically clone and develop their own system, or Lara can actually cooperate with other open source systems, such as the Morpheus tagging system or some dictionaries to basically collect data about translation or grammatical reference. And if open source systems can collaborate, then it's very useful, and the work that is usually spread out among various smaller collaborators in crowdsourcing is enhanced, and it becomes more effective when other open source systems are being used, such as online dictionaries that basically collect automatically data from the data sets the dictionary has, for example. Then the students are used, but not only students. I have created my own text, or other collaborators can create their own texts, and they can and then they can participate in smaller or larger tasks to create language resources for basically teaching or learning a language. And especially reading is supported in this Lara platform because that is one of the skills that language learners need to develop when they learn a different language. In my case, I focus on Icelandic, and you can see here a text in Icelandic. So for you who would like to learn, for example, Icelandic, you can use this and read the text, which is a children's book, and see the translation of each word. The good thing about, let's say, Lara is that it has got all the information in one page, so you don't need to have different tabs open, and you can read the text. And if you don't understand what komdu means, you can see it now here in the circle. You click on it, and then on the right hand side another page opens, and then it shows you the word in the infinitive case, and then you can see the translation of it and even the grammar information, basically how the form is, in which form the word is used. So all of this in one page, as well as you can listen to the recording of this word and the whole sentence. So I used it in a class with learners of Icelandic as a second language, and they liked it very much, because once you understand what komdu means, then you don't need to look it up again. So you keep on reading, and you click on other words that you don't understand to get the information. And then, of course, as Anna has already showed to you, you get the context where the word, in which each form of the word, sentences where each form of the word occurs. So that is for the reference. And not on the first time, but maybe on the second, third time, readers get very much familiar with it. And for example, my students in the class last year, they very much liked it because they could use it even in their phone. Even though today the phone, the mobile phones, for example, smartphones, they support the view, the page view, but still the mouse, for example, function is missing in the mobile device. So it's still in the development, and I hope after some time we'll be able to adjust it so that it can be very much mobile friendly. So this is the first example of Tina Ferry Free, which is a children's book, and it's called Tina is Going on Vacation in English. And then the next example, which we did in Iceland, was for Icelandic Sign Language. Anyone, me or you, can now learn, for example, Icelandic Sign Language by reading, for example, the same book, Tina Ferry Free, Tina is Going on Vacation, but instead of translation into English, you get translation, if you understand Icelandic, you get the translation of the same word into a sign. So for example, I speak Icelandic, and for me, I don't need to translate all the words here, but I need a translation to each sign. So then I can click on each word and I get automatically a sign of each word, basically a video plays for me. And then I get all the examples where different forms of the same word occur in sentences. And I can even view a video recording of each sentence just to get the context or contextualize the sign within the sentence. So supported are also sign languages in this crowdsourcing platform, which means that other people can add texts and data for learning or teaching other sign languages. For example, Polish can be done in a similar way, and crowdsourcing would be used to, for example, record signs of each word. And obviously, the best thing would be to have all the signs recorded by one person, but if more people would be involved, which means like crowdsourcing that is spread out among more individuals, then the data set will be more varied. And then it can be maybe commented or by other users whether the signs are correct and so on. So that's basically an example of crowdsourcing. And another example of crowdsourcing is this text, which is written in Old Norse, which means also archaic languages can be supported. And Old Norse, in this case, has been translated into both Icelandic, modern Icelandic, and English to help learners in medieval studies or learners of Icelandic who need to read old literature, for example, to understand Old Norse better. And it works in a very similar way or in the same way as the other texts. So you've got voice recordings, and then you've got a reference to the translation of Old Norse vocabulary and sentences into either English in this case or modern Icelandic. And for example, it's another example of crowdsourcing would be to add translations of Polish. So what you see on your left can be translated immediately into Polish. And for example, those who are interested into Old Norse poetry, for example, Völuspá from the Poetic Eddas, can work on inserting Polish translations and basically can use it to learn Old Norse through Polish instead of going through a third language, which usually is English or then German. So these have been examples of different texts, and Lara at the moment supports flashcards exercises, which means that the knowledge can be tested after reading the text. And on your left, you see figure 1. There's a flashcard. Basically, you need to fill in the correct word, and you just select from the option you have there which word is the most fitting there according to what you remember from reading the text and the grammar that you possess. And you can get either green check mark, which is correct, or a red cross mark, which means not correct. So you can practice until you hit the correct answer. And then on your right hand side, you see figure 2, and this is a flashcard, basically an exercise for testing your knowledge in signs or in Icelandic Sign Language. Just you played each video and then you have to click on the correct word that it symbolizes. And it works in the same way. Either you click on the correct one or on the wrong one, and you can continue until you find the correct answer. So this is basically an example of how crowdsourcing can be done. It can be done by one person creating one text and inserting all the translations, or dividing the task when, for example, you've got a longer book, like what Anna did with her students, The Little Prince. It is not a long book, but it is not short enough for one person to spend one day to work on creating the content. So more people, in this case it was students, collaborated together and added the translations and recordings and created one crowdsourced document. So in conclusion, crowdsourcing for education, for example, in language learning, is a promising area for future developments within language learning and teaching. And Lara is a good example of how varying forms of crowdsourcing for education can be enacted and integrated with in-class or even online teaching. So thank you very much.